What's up, guys? So today's deep dive is going to be Thor: Love and Thunder, which is slated for release on November 5th of 2021, and is so far the last confirmed film for Phase 4, meaning that Phase 4 will also be currently the shortest phase out of all of the phases so far, with Phases 1 and 2 both having 6 films, and Phase 3 having about 10 or 11. So yeah, with that said, let's get straight into this. Okay, now obviously I've changed outfits between the beginning and now. I did actually have this video finished and exported, and I was about to upload and everything, and then I found about another half dozen trivia points that have come out since Comic-Con that sort of helped me to form a theory on this video. So I thought I would revisit and we'll go from there. So as I said before, this film will release November 5th of 2021. It is directed by Taika Waititi, who also directed Ragnarok, making this the first Thor film to be directed by the same director. Chris Hemsworth's back as Thor. Odinson. Tessa Thompkins will be back as Valkyrie. There are rumours that this Valkyrie is not Brunhild, the Valkyrie from the comics. I'll get to that in a second as well, because there is a little bit of evidence to support that in-universe as well. And there is a link as well in the description down below if you want to go and read some of my out-of-universe, not my evidence, but there is evidence out of universe as well. Natalie Portman will be coming back as Jane Foster Thor. So a really funny meme that basically compared the Thor movies to the Toy Story franchise, where it is the fourth movie in a sort of series of films, reintroducing a love interest that was not present in the third installment, basically saying that Thor is Woody and Jane Foster is Bo Peep, which I like to think makes Valkyrie Jessie in sort of a way. I don't know. I'll leave that up to you guys to think about. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. But yeah, moving on to all of the trivia points that I had for this. This will mean this film will mark Thor as being the only MCU character to have 4 standalone films in the MCU. Up until this film's confirmation that it was coming, the MCU's general go-to was give a character 3 standalone films and their Avengers appearances, and that's their contract. That's the actor's contract for that role. It marks Natalie Portman's official return to the cinematic universe, as I said before. After working on Thor: The Dark World, she decided to retire from doing any more MCU films. She also has been reported as saying that she doesn't know, she didn't know if they'd ever call her back, but as far as she was aware, she was done. So whether it was her deciding to quit because of a bad experience on set, or simply that they didn't see a future for her character to evolve past simply as being a love interest, which doesn't utilize Natalie Portman's actual acting ability properly is unclear, but she was pretty sure she was done after The Dark World. So when it was revealed that she had a voice cameo in Avengers Endgame, which I'll be honest, I didn't know about until reading the trivia for this, it sort of suggested that she was game for another Thor movie, and then obviously she came out on stage, was given the Mjolnir prop, and sort of had it confirmed that she will be coming back as Lady Thor. The font style is inspired by the sword and sorcery subgenre that was popular in the 1980s. You look at it and it looks very sort of He-Man, Conan, sort of Dark Crystal almost, in the way that the letters are shaped. So yeah, that's kind of cool to think about, considering that Ragnarok had sort of a similar thing, with its font style being very reminiscent of sort of like old school sci-fi fantasy films as well. It's very interesting to see where they're trying to go and what they're trying to hint at with making the titles look that way. As I said before, this will be the first film to adapt the female version of Thor. There was a whole comic book storyline that had Thor lose his worthiness to wield Mjolnir, which would pretty much undo his realizing what it takes to be worthy in the first Thor film, if that's to happen in this movie. Or it could just simply be that he starts having a not knowing where he's supposed to go from the end of Endgame. He could start to have a crisis of identity that then causes him to become unworthy, allowing Lady Thor to enter the picture. But in the comic books, he loses his ability to wield Mjolnir, and that comic book also introduced Lady Thor to sort of fill in and replace him while he, figured his shit out, basically. And that comic book series is actually quite a large inspiration for this film, and I'll get to that in a moment. So Valkyrie, who is now Queen, or King, however you want to look at it, of New Asgard, will be Marvel Comics' first LGBT superhero. I believe Tessa Thompkins confirmed that she's bi, but then another quote from Tessa herself said that she's looking for her queen to rule New Asgard with her. And of the two major fan theories for this, they could either be a female Thor, which is the one that I'm leaning more towards, or Captain Marvel, which I'm not sure how that's going to go. I will get to that as well in just a moment as well. Ryan Gosling is apparently in talks with Taika Waititi for an unknown role. Basically, they had lunch. So, I mean, it could just be that it's two friends getting lunch and it doesn't have to be anything to do with films. Actors are allowed to do stuff with directors that don't actually involve film. They could just be friends. The Loki Disney Plus series will tie into Thor Love and Thunder, so there is a high possibility that Loki will be back for this. And if that's the case, you can expect all sorts of theories on how Loki actually survived Infinity War and where he was during Endgame to arise as soon as this movie hits theaters. Because you just know that everybody loves Loki, and we just want to know what happened to him and how he ended up not in Endgame. so far, I reckon that he was sort of hiding away after he'd sort of basically betrayed Asgard in the hopes that he'd be able to kill Thanos early on, and then he became victim to the snap himself. That's the way I'm leaning, considering he's a Jotun. That could have been a possibility. So that's, at the moment, what I'm leaning towards. Kate Blanchett and Idris Elba, who played Hela and Heimdall respectively, both want to return to the franchise, which is pretty cool to see Hela come back, but considering that would mean that she was basically undefeated in Ragnarok, could sort of start to cause some problems. Amora, the Enchantress, is reportedly going to be the main villain. As a secondary sort of side to her, Gore the God Butcher, who also appeared in that comic book storyline I was talking about before, the one that introduced Lady Thor. So Gore is going around doing to gods and like the various pantheons of gods. So Gore's doing to them what Mordo's currently doing to sorcerers in the MCU. He's decided that there's too many of them and that they don't care enough to use their vast abilities to actually help the rest of the universe. So he's going to just wipe them out because the universe isn't really going to miss them anyway. And so I believe it's during a fight with him that Thor actually loses the ability to wield Mjolnir, which could be cool. Mangog may appear as a third villain. Mangog's one of sort of the weird monsters that Stan Lee and Jack Kirby created back in the day. He is composed of a billion beings, I believe is the direct quote, as well as also being the living prison for his own race. So he's comprised of the billions of souls of his own race. Because comics. He may appear as a third villain. Odin, in the comics, is responsible for creating him. So his appearance could continue the theme of Thor having to clear up Odin's messes. So in Thor 1, it was Odin didn't tell Loki that he was adopted, which caused Loki to go on this massive spree to try and take over Asgard, win Asgard over, so that he would have the kingdom that he believed was his birthright. In the Dark World, it was the Dark Elves. Not necessarily Odin's fault that time, it was more Bor's, and then Odin just sort of believed his father without actually finding out the truth. So in that case, it was Odin's ignorance and just blind acceptance of what his father had told him. In Ragnarok, it was his actual life itself kept Hela from coming back, and so in that case, it would mean that Mangog being in this movie would show sort of a continuation of that as well, because Mangog has a hatred for Odin in the comics for slaughtering his people, I believe, which caused him to be comprised of the billions of souls that he is comprised of. So that could be really cool to see, as well as that having a big monster in the film sort of fits, considering that we had frost giants, then dark elves, then fire demons. So now having this other big monster to continue that fantasy theme that the Thor films are going with, not only fits in with the way the logo is styled, but also fits in with the overall theme of Thor films. So I'm pretty much already sold on the idea that Mangog will be in it, even if it's just sort of a little cameo thing of like what he's doing, kind of like the Battle of Vanaheim at the beginning of Dark World. He could just literally have the one opening scene sort of thing to set up, this is what Thor's been doing since Endgame, and yeah. And as I said, he also, yeah, he also appears in Jason Aaron's The Mighty Thor, the same comic book storyline where Thor loses his worthiness and Gore the God Butcher appears. Mangog appears in that as well. And as I said before, Waititi is known to be heavily inspired by that comic book storyline for this film. So if we can take that as basically confirming Mangog and Gore, that means that bringing Amora in creates another problem for Thor, considering her powers are basically that she's a siren, sort of like from Greek mythology, where she can make men do whatever she wants, which would then leave us with Valkyrie and the female Thor to try and fight off all three of them once they basically go, hey, he's got, you know, a weapon that almost, a weapon that did overpower a fully functioning Infinity Gauntlet. They take him out right away with Enchantress, and then that leaves a being of a billion souls and an actual God Butcher to just start laying waste to New Asgard, which could be a bit of a problem, I would imagine. Reportedly, the script has already been written and completed by Waititi, with production apparently being eyed to start very soon. I take very soon as a very loose term as well. Very soon for films could mean within the next 6 months, as well as, you know, very soon being as soon as they get the green light and have more of a cast confirmed, sort of thing. And the last bit of trivia news that I have here is that writer-director James Gunn confirmed that Thor Love and Thunder will happen before Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which as of yet may or may not actually include Thor in it. Got to remember that he did at one point have the script finished, and that it was going to be one of the first films of Phase 4. So at that time, he wouldn't have been aware, I wouldn't think, that Thor was going to join them at the end of Endgame, considering how tight-lipped Marvel can be about their titles, even with other directors and stuff, just so that they can keep their secrets to themselves. So I wouldn't imagine that script would have involved Thor, and then once they rehired James Gunn, I believe he sort of reworked it a little bit because of the time that had passed, and therefore the more plot points that had been put in place, he would have reworked it a little bit. So I still wouldn't expect Thor to show up, and if he does, the film will not actually be called as Guardians of the Galaxy. It will still just be called Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. But I'm going to get into that a lot more next month. Volume 3 is actually one of the films that I'm going to sort of speculate on, I believe. Quickly check. Yeah. So that's going to be one of the films that I speculate on next month. So if you want to see that video, make sure you hit the subscription button and the notification bell. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. All of my social media links are in the description down below, as well as all of the links to all of the information sources that I used to get all of this trivia and stuff. As for my theory of what I think is going to happen, I think, as I said before, Thor's going to have his crisis of identities post-Endgame, which is going to cause him to no longer be able to wield Stormbreaker, which is currently the magical hammer running around the MCU, since Mjolnir was taken back to 2013 and then therefore destroyed by Hela, which will leave Jane Foster to be able to come in and pick it up, become Lady Thor. Then obviously, as I said, if Amora's in it, she's going to make sure that Thor can't come back and realize his worthiness again and beat them all, leading our two female leads to take on not only Amora, a female villain, which will be really cool to see a female hero take on a female villain in the MCU. And obviously this is taking into speculation that we don't actually know for certain if Iron Maiden's the main villain in Black Widow, or if Taskmaster is, and therefore if Taskmaster is male or female as well. So if that doesn't turn out to be the case, this will still be a really cool place to see more female heroes taking on female villains, as well as not only that, but taking on this big burly dude that literally kills gods for a living, as well as a sort of entity of a billion souls. That'd be pretty cool to see. Obviously there'll be some point there where Thor realizes his worthiness, and he's able to come back in to the fold to help win the day. It is still called Thor: Love and Thunder. However, that being the case, the Thor that it could be referring to in the title might actually be Lady Thor. All still remains to be seen, and obviously a lot of this stuff can still change, it being so far away for release. So as more confirmed details come out, I will talk about that as well. As for Valkyrie, who as of yet is so far our main female for this film, her story continuing on from Ragnarok and the Infinity War and Endgame films. I think that having Lady Thor be her main sort of love interest and the one she wants to be her queen in New Asgard fits better than Captain Marvel, purely because of, and this is where I'm going to bring up my evidence for why she's not Brunhild, purely because the blonde Valkyrie warrior that died in front of her in her flashback sequence in Ragnarok, I believe is Brunhild, considering in 2015's Age of Ultron, the liquor during the Stan Lee cameo that Thor's holding, he actually says was aged for 1,000 years from trying to remember the exact quote. Basically, it's from barrels made out of Brunhild's fleet. Brunhild's fleet could have been the Valkyriors, meaning that Brunhild, as the comics Valkyrie, was the leader of the Valkyrior, and then when they died in battle with Hela, except for Tessa Tompkins, the materials that were sort of left over from that fight would have then gone on to forge these barrels for the liquor, giving that whole sort of, as far as the timeline goes, gives that a lot more validity, as well as the fact that female, like Lady Thor in the comics, is also a blonde, semi-Asgardian warrior woman, could spark some nostalgic romantic feelings in Valkyrie, therefore causing her to become a lot more romantically interested in Jane. It still does keep Jane as sort of a love interest, but it means that she has to become a badass, ass-kicking warrior woman to become a love interest again. But thus is the cycle of us mere mortals when the main character of a film is literally a god. So yeah, yeah, with all of that out of the way, guys, knight to a2, and I'll check you all later.